I don't know if you've had a chance yet over the last few years to meet one of our community members whose name is Michael Kelly. Michael Kelly, could you stand? I want you to just get a facial for Michael Kelly. That's Michael Kelly right there. Michael Kelly is one of our wall huggers on the back. Michael Kelly just got home from walking the Camino de Santiago in northern Spain, the oldest Christian pilgrimage path in the world. He walked 497 miles. Reading his journal brought back so many memories of walking with 24 members of our community a couple of summers back. What everybody talks about is the people you meet along the way. From the whole world, they are. Believers and seekers, old and young, limping and running. One guy along that way stood out for me. He was a guy from Denmark, actually. He described himself as agnostic, maybe even atheist, I'm not sure. And as he would walk the Camino, as people would pass him or he would pass them, every once in a while along the way, if he was so inclined, he would give them a word to people that he would ask them to think about, to consider, to hold as they walked, to turn over in their heart, to think about as they walked along that ancient way. So he gave me my word, and then we stumbled across each other later in that same day, and I had been considering the word he gave me, and so I asked him if I could give him a word. And I did. I gave him the word mystery. Because I find mystery so real in my life. And him not being a believer, I wondered where the word mystery might go inside of him, if he could honestly say he's ever experienced mystery along his way in life. About 3 or 4 days later, and this happens a lot on the Camino, even if you're just walking 100 miles and not 500, about 3 or 4 days later, I ran into him in a hostel, and he came out rushing over to me and said, "I've been thinking so much about the word mystery that you gave me to consider." He said, "My answer, what keeps coming back to me, is that I find such a mystery in how people meet along the way, not just the way of the Camino, but the way of our lives, how people meet along the way and influence each other. It seems almost random that it's this person and not that person. And why now? And what became of them and what became of me because of that encounter? Again, it felt like it was by chance. It seemed so random, and yet in some ways it seemed like anything but chance and anything but random. He couldn't stop thinking about it, really. Mystery. That is the mystery happening in this gospel. That's the mystery happening to Jesus in the story you just heard. The last thing Jesus expected that day, that hanging out with his disciples, this foreigner would barge into his life and break down the walls by who she was and what she said. That she, this random foreigner woman, would change the entire trajectory of the rest of his life. And so hours, 2,000 years later, the unexpected meeting along the way that he never anticipated, this unplanned encounter from this one you would least expect. And it changed Jesus forever. As a matter of fact, from this point on in Luke's gospel, he never ever said again that he just came for the people of Israel. From this conversation on, he was here for the world. This foreigner, this Samaritan, this woman affected Jesus. Though not at first. At first he resisted with all of his might, utterly shutting her down. She was a waste of his time. She was a distraction to his mission as he understood it. She was a pest, and she was a pest to his disciples as well. A total pest. But something about her broke through his wall. Maybe it was her incredible love for her daughter that she was asking was not for something for herself, but for her daughter that so disarmed him, that she would be willing to risk looking like a fool, that she would interrupt his day, that she would risk his rejection and even ridicule, which she did get from him, by the way. She would risk all that because of her love for her daughter. Maybe that's what broke through. Maybe it was her cleverness that said, when Jesus said, I'm not giving you the food I was meant to give to Israel, and she said, you know, even at a feast, you give some of the food to the dogs. Let me at least be a dog and give me something for my daughter. Whatever it was, his resistance to her gave way to encounter. And he, Jesus of Nazareth, was changed forever. And you and I sit here because the Apostle Paul picked up on this story of Jesus' great opening to the world to non-Jews and carried it forward to our day. In this gospel, Jesus encounters another human being, a person he never expected or even wanted to change his life, saw no need to change his thinking. She changed his life. He was encountered, and he was encountering another human being. She was an unlikely influence. She was. Most of the time, my friends, they are the ones who influence us the most. Hence, mystery. Have you ever had that happen to you? You and I, we meet people all the time, and whether or not that becomes a true encounter oftentimes is up to us. An encounter is an unexpected meeting with someone, you know? It's meeting them face to face, heart to heart, engaging with them in a deeper and most unexpected way. It's presence to presence, often almost out of nowhere. And all of a sudden, listening happens. And all of a sudden, we enter a relationship with someone or something, some experience, and in that moment, it's just so mutual. But it's really only possible if I allow a person to influence me instead of trying so hard all the time to influence them. Allow them to influence me. When a genuine encounter like that happens, we have this sense that something else is happening too. This other presence with a capital P is slipping in to this presence to presence, which is mystery. You know it because it's so self-transcending. You know it because it changes your thinking. And it might even reorient your whole life. The day you met your best friend, the day you met the one you now call your partner for life, your husband or your wife, the day you finally let them affect you, changed your life forever. If you're not open to being influenced in a chance encounter because you don't want to be bothered, or you think you have all the answers, and you want them to see it your way, or you're rushing past, or you're judging them by appearances or politics, or because they're not smart enough for you, then a genuine encounter of this magnitude will be impossible for you, and you lose. One of the biggest blocks to being changed influenced by another person is that for some reason along the way, I decided he or she or people like them are so predictable. I think I know what they're going to say, what they're going to think, and why they think it. But people are not predictable. If I were to assume that every new freshman walking across our doorsteps this week is just another 18-year-old, I would have long ago burned out on this job. I know they're anything but predictable. Each of them, my friends, each of them carries some story, some perspective, some thought, some inspiration, some moral courage that can influence me, affect me, even though I'm 40 years older than they are. 45? This is my 27th freshman class, and I'm as eager as I was the first year, 26 and a half years ago now. As eager to meet them, as eager to see which one of them will mark my life, and maybe even let me mark their life. I know they're going to have a lot to teach me, even though I'm really so much older than they are. I walk into student parties truly eager to learn something from someone at that party. Something I need to know that I don't even know I need to know. Ready to be knocked up the side of the head by some new affection, some new inspiration or new idea. Maybe that's why after 26 years, I don't burn out. And I find myself still so eager to see which among them is going to change my life this year. Sometimes it's the last thing I expected. If we ever dare to assume, you and I, that anybody out there is just only always going to be predictable, including our spouse of many years, always being predictable, we will have left ourselves one hell of a boring relationship. And we'll have to live inside that boring relationship the rest of our lives. And we will have missed the grace offered to us in the moment meeting, in that moment of encounter, that I could have had I not assumed so much about them. That's why to truly encounter another person is to realize that no matter the depths to which we have already gotten to know each other, the well of mystery will never be exhausted. A strange fact that long-time married couples know well. Encounter, if you've been reading what he's been talking about. Encounter is a big word for our Holy Father, Pope Francis. He talks about it often. It's a major theme of his papacy. He dreams a culture in the church of encounter so that we get so good at that we can be a light to the nations, to encourage the power of encounter in all the world. If it has been a long time since you've met somebody like that along the way, that when you really encountered someone you were changed, then you either need to get out more or get out of yourself more. Yet another reason to get out from behind those screens and meet people. Every person we meet carries the potential of teaching us something about them or about ourselves, about life, that can change our lives. Sometimes those lessons will be very brief, simply reminders. Sometimes they will last a lifetime. For me, when it happens, it almost feels like this was much, much more than chance. It seems it was almost like she or he was sent to me, for me. It feels like way more than an accident. It seems so much more like a grace. Or maybe it's true. There is something in meeting this one in this moment that is mystery.